In this video, we're going to be taking a look at creating a portion of this design. Probably would not want to sit through the video of an entire design like this, but I wanted to show a portion of this design. The individual who sent this to me was wanting to find out how Easy Stone will go about stoning this design. And the simple answer to that question is Easy Stone will not stone this design. You will. So anytime that you have a design like this, if you really want a great result, you, the designer, has to create the design. Now, yes, Easy Stone has some tools in it that will help simplify the process, but when you're creating a project like this, it really is all about the designer and what they see this design being. There are certain things that I have kind of developed as a design style as I've gone through and created so many designs. Certain things work better than others. So I will kind of try and go through some of that with you so you get a better understanding of how to go about tackling a design when you have something that's a bit more challenging, such as this design here. So the first thing that we have to determine in any design that we create, we want to make sure that our design is the size, our reference artwork is the size we want. And you can see this design is about 15.5 inches, give or take, about 15 5/8 or so. And that is the size of the intended design. So we have that already set up for us. Vector, not vector, it really doesn't matter. I would probably go ahead and convert this to a bitmap, which I know seems a bit counterintuitive, but that's typically what I work with is bitmaps. So we'll go ahead and lock the bitmap down. Just on the specialty tab here, we'll choose lock image and lock it down. And then the next big question mark for a design like this is what size stones do you want to use? And think about, what the purpose of the design is. On a design like this, my gut tells me I might go a little crazy. I don't typically use SS20 stones in a design, and I won't in this example because I know the customer, they probably don't want me using SS20 stones. But if I were going to do it, I probably would use SS20 stones and maybe not use 6s. So I would use 20s, 16s, and 10s. But, again, you as the designer, you have to make that determination before you ever lay down a single stone, what you envision it to be and what stone sizes you want to use. So let's go ahead and just get started. And I don't know, I guess maybe what we'll do is we'll just start on one of these little swirly gigs up here in the corner just so you can get an idea of what I would do. So the first thing I would do, first of all, is lay down a couple of stones in the stone sizes that I'm going to be using. So I'm going to, for the purpose of the video, I'm going to just use hot pink stones. So I right click on my quick select color button here for hot pink, and I'm going to drop me down a 16. So I'm just right clicking on 16, and that changes my stone size. And then I'm going to right click on 10 and drop that one, and then I'm going to right click on 6 and drop that one, and then go ahead and hit the escape key. So you can see how small these stones are. Once you actually have it next to your reference artwork, you can see the stones are actually pretty quite small in comparison. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to take my SS10 stone here and just drop it there. And what I would do is really not very scientific at all. I would just bring this down, and you see how you bring it down and that circle is roughly the same width, and I would just leave it there, and then I would bump this up to SS16, and then come up to this point, same thing again, and then we'll go back to 10 here. And I think I'm going to just go, at least in this section, I'm just going to use, for the most part, just 16s and 10s. So we'll go up to 10 there, and then this is where it begins to get a little wider. So I'll bring this 16 back up here, and we'll come around over, I don't know, we'll just kind of make it up as we go along here. And then another 10, come down maybe there, and then back to 16, and then we'll come down right to that point there. All right, so that is kind of our beginning stages. And then what I want to do is I'm just going to connect the dots here. So the way I'm going to do that is select one stone, hold my shift key, select the other, shift AS. And what that does is it gives us the opportunity to change the path of that stone. Okay, and then we'll do the same thing here, shift AS, but these are all 16s along this path here. Like so. And, you know, we don't have to be too concerned about getting it perfect straight out the chute. We'll come back in and we're going to kind of fine tune and massage it a little bit here. Let's go ahead and delete the path. So you can see we're just kind of laying some stones in here. You'll see how this all kind of comes together here shortly. So there is that path. Delete that path for that stone. And then we'll do the same thing here. We'll bend this around. That looks good. Delete that path. And then we'll go ahead and connect this. We'll delete that path. And then we'll connect this. And we'll just take this and just pull it really tight down here. Like so. All right, so that kind of gets us at a starting point. Now, obviously, we still have work to do here. And anytime you see this, like right here, there's some big gaps right here. So I'm just going to select a stone and hit plus on my keyboard a couple of times. And what that actually does is creates a duplicate right on top. Okay, see that? So we're just going to, anywhere there's a gap, just hit that stone. So you're like right here, it's pretty tight. So we don't need to add a stone there, but here there's a pretty good gap. So let's add a stone there. Hit the plus key on our keyboard. Over here, there's a pretty good gap. Let's just do, I'm going to do 2. All right. So now that hopefully we're going to fill in these gaps, let's just select the whole design. And I have all of my stones selected at this point. But I have to tell EasyStone where to begin the respacing process. So, and the way EasyStone determines where it starts is the last stone that we select. So we have all of our stones selected at this point. So I'm going to hold my shift key down and deselect one and then reselect it again. Now that was the last stone that was selected. So this is where it begins the respacing process. So if we right click on D, now oddly, there is somewhere in here there is a path selected, a path of stones that I did not delete. You can see that because it's turned pink here. So let's delete that, and then let's just reset our start point again. There we go. So now we just have loose stones there. We don't have stones that are connected to a path. And we can right click on D now, and you'll see that EasyStone will reset all these stones. And notice now, if I go into wireframe mode, we can see we have a new path that was generated for us. But if you look at the stones, everything is equally spaced perfectly. And that's what we needed. So now you can see it's equally spaced perfectly. So this is where the designer in us comes out. We could leave it just the way it was, but there's one section here that's pretty glaringly, you know, it should be thicker. Actually, there's two sections. There's this section over here that should be thicker, and then there's this section here that should be thicker as well. And so this is where Easy Stone comes into play, and the designer comes into play is, well, what do we want it to be? Well, I'm going to take one of these big stones and just hit my space bar, and what that does, every time you hit the space bar, it just makes a duplicate. Now, because it's getting smaller here, I'm just going to go ahead and resize that. Maybe resize it again. And maybe just stop there. Okay, so here it's thick. Here it's a little bit smaller. And then we'll maybe go. Now, as a design principle, when I'm doing things like this, notice how I like to nuzzle the ends in between two stones. To me, I don't know why. To me, that's just one of my design cues that I try to do. The other thing that's really weird when I'm designing, and this isn't like a perfect rule of thumb, but when I'm designing, I typically will go 1 or 3. Very seldom would I ever go 2 like I did here. I don't know why that is in me, but it seems like every time I go to design something, I either want to use 1 of that stone size or I want to use 3 of that stone size. So I don't know why, but like I said, it's just kind of a weird thing. So anyhow, that's what I would do to fill that in. And then I would do something similar over here. So we can take one of these small stones, and again, as a regular design cue, I like to nuzzle it in between two stones. I'm not sure why that is. It's just a weird thing in my head that tells me that's what I should do. And the nice thing about when you actually take control and do your design work, you can make it up as you go along. There's no right or wrong necessarily. So whatever the original artwork was, you can modify that to make it whatever you want it to be. So you don't have to necessarily follow that original artwork, all that closely, really. So we'll just come in here. We'll go ahead and make these. I'll go ahead and make that 1 stone size smaller. And don't worry about, getting this overlap business, because we're just going to take all of these stones. I just select one, hold my shift key, and select the others just by clicking on it. And then right click. And that will even everything out, space everything out, and look good. So now if we take this away, sometimes it's easier just to take it away and look at it separately. That is the finished product for just that one little swirl. So you can see that in this process, it actually does take a fair bit of work, and that's why you pay your designer if you're going to have this done for you. That's why you pay your designer their design fee, because when you get it back, it's perfect. It looks really nice. And if there's one thing that's going to set you apart from the competition, it's the quality of the designs that you're putting on your garments. So you've kind of seen how we do one little swirl like that. Why don't we move over to doing a letter, or maybe a couple letters, and get a feel for what you would do for that. So let's go ahead and just do our E. Let's go ahead and drop down an SS10 stone. And you can see that that looks a little bit big. So we're going to drop that down to a 6. And we're going to go ahead and leave that at 6, and then we're going to bump this to 10. And just go ahead and come around. All I'm doing is just hit my space bar. We'll bring this stone up. We'll bring this stone over. And I don't know what I'm going to do here, actually. Let's go ahead and make that a 16. And we'll drop a few of those. And we'll bring back over a 10. And then we'll bring back over a 6. Okay, so again, we're going to fill in, make this a little bit thicker. I don't think I'm going to do that here, but I do think I want to do that here. So again, it's up to the designer to decide what you want to do. But this is what I think I'm going to do. So I'm going to go there and there. Again, I do try to nuzzle it in between two stones, that first starting point there. And then we'll go ahead, see if we can't bring that down like so. Again, I do try to nuzzle it in between two stones as well. Okay, so that would be my E. I think, like I said, I think I'll leave that there. So let's move over to our A here. What are we going to do there? Well, let's pull over an SS10 and an SS6. So we'll do something like that. And then I'm going to come down here, and all I'm doing is moving that stone and hitting my space bar, because I know right where I want those to be. And we'll go up, and then we'll come back in for our second row. So we'll put a 6 there, and then a 10. And then we have to space all this out so it looks proper, like so. Then we're going to do the same kind of thing over here. Sometimes we can borrow something that we've already done. So sometimes we don't want to recreate the wheel every single time. So you can see we have some of this work already done that we can borrow. We just have to revamp it a little bit. It's better than placing all these stones again. So let's go ahead and just do that, because we can make a small change typically without too much effort. Maybe I'll delete this one. We'll have to figure out what we're going to do here. So I think I'm going to go something along this line here. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to swoop in here with my freehand pick tool and pick up all these stones. Look at what you just selected. Make sure that you have selected what you want selected. I've been using CorelDRAW a lot, so I'm pretty fluent with that freehand pick tool. You have to tell EasyStone where to begin the respacing process. So we've done that, and now those are all nicely spaced. I do want to come back in here and respace these. Again, general rule of thumb, I do like to nuzzle that starting point between two stones. You can see because we respaced all of these, this stone is not in between. So I'll try and reset that so it is, just because I think it looks a little bit cleaner, a little bit better. Let's go ahead and do the M as long as we're here and things are going swimmingly. Let's go ahead and set our 6, our 6, our 6, switch over to 10s. Come down here to 10s, connect AS. We'll connect those 10s for us. And then we need another column of 10s. So we'll do that again. This time we have to add a stone. And then we'll add a little 6. Okay, so that first part is done. And then we're going to move on to our next part. So again, reuse some of the stone placement that we already have for the center part. And then we're just going to delete some stones that we don't need. Switch this stone out to a 6 so it curves more like we're expected to. And then we'll come back in with some 6s over here. Again, nuzzle that in between two stones. Alright, so once we have that, then we can go ahead and take that and borrow it for our next phase over here. But obviously, we're going to delete this and this, and we're going to come around. So you can see we're using most of it, but not all of it. And then I'm probably, well, let's stick with that one there, then drop it down. Probably do something like that. And then we'll come up and up. And you can see we gotta go all the way up. So this is gonna be, we're gonna go tens all the way up there. So from here to here, we're gonna go tens. Oops. So from there to there, we're gonna do all tens. There we go. So that will get us to that point there. So let's just go ahead and peel away what we've already done here, so we can kind of look at it all by itself. And let's go ahead and throw a weed box around it. So you can see the great thing about this process is the result that we get is spot on, exactly what we want. And it, obviously the end result looks great. The drawback, of course, is just the amount of time it takes to get the design created. A design like this, all done up nice and pretty like, would probably take me at least an hour, I would guess, to get it all done perfectly. But the results, in my opinion, would be well worth it. So you have a real basic concept of how you would go about stoning something, more detailed and more specific. And then it's just a whole lot more of the same. And a lot of it is just what you envision it to be. So it's really up to you, the designer, to decide ultimately just exactly, what the finished product you want it to look like, and then using the tools here in EasyStone to make it happen. So hopefully this gives you a little insight as to what we go through when we're creating these types of designs. And really the only way to learn it is to experiment and try and try and try and try, because that's how I did it. And then with experience, you'll be able to take it, just about any design, and be able to create it, fairly quickly. And in the meantime, if you're flustered and you don't feel like taking the time, well, there's plenty of designers out there that were happy to take your design and convert it for you. Thanks for watching.